He's the strongest physics teacher in America. By day, he's a gentle and refined teacher, sharing knowledge in the classroom. But at night, he steps into the octagon, throwing brutal punches and knocking opponent after opponent to the ground. He won't stop until he's taken the prize money from every single fighter. Only then will he let his opponents off the hook. Then he heads home, patches up his wounds in the bathroom, and puts on a suit to disguise himself as a gentle, friendly teacher. He thought his secret was well hidden, but rumors had already started spreading around campus. Students whispered among themselves because more than one had seen him throwing underground punches at a strip club the night before.
Hey, yo, Mr. C.
Uh-huh.
Hey, my brother was at the titty bar last night, and he said you was choking brothers out. I mean, what's up? Is it true?
Just as Brendan turned around to deny it, he saw Principal Zito waiting at the door, signaling for a private talk. Since the school strictly prohibits teachers from taking part in fighting-related side jobs, Zito demanded a clear explanation.
I need the money, Joe.
Brendan revealed the heartbreaking truth. His youngest daughter had a severe heart condition, requiring expensive daily treatment to stay alive. He and his wife worked multiple jobs, but it still wasn't enough to cover the costs. To make matters worse, with no way to pay off their loan, the bank was preparing to repossess their house in just 3 months. Desperate and out of options, Brendan chose to return to the ring, using his bruised and battered body to keep his family afloat. But even though this was a last resort means of survival, it still couldn't win Zito's approval.
Are you out of your mind? I mean, you're a goddamn teacher. You got no in the ring with those animals.
Actually, I used to be one of those animals.
Brendan desperately explained his circumstances. Zito, moved despite himself, sympathized, but school policy couldn't be ignored, especially with the state superintendent demanding a full investigation. A harsh punishment was inevitable. In the end, Brendan kept his job, but he was suspended without pay for an entire semester, pushing his already struggling family to the brink. So, he had no choice but to return to the fight club full-time. Though Brendan and Tess had vowed that their daughter's future wouldn't be built on her father risking his life in the cage, their desperate circumstances left Tess with no choice but to silently consent to his return to fighting. The next day, Brendan visited his old friend Frank. Frank ran a local MMA gym and worked part-time as a coach. He was surprised and happy to see Brendan, but also worried he was there to ask for money.
I mean, I was hoping that you would train me.
Train you for what?
I want to get back in the cage.
Brendan quickly clarified his intentions to avoid misunderstanding. But when Brendan said he wanted to return to the fight scene, Frank brought up old grudges. Brendan had once been one of the top fighters in the country, even shining for a time in the UFC. But in pursuit of a stable family life, he parted ways with his manager Frank. He ignored Frank's pleas and chose to retire at the peak of his career. Frank never got over being abandoned, but after learning Brendan had been suspended and had no source of income, he agreed to let him train at the gym and compete in unofficial matches for cash. There was just one condition.
Come down here with the 2 puppies screaming at Frank.
It's not gonna happen.
Maybe that's what true friendship looks like, no matter the past scars. When you're at your lowest, a real friend shows up for you. From then on, Brendan trained daily with professional fighters at the gym and climbed into amateur ring after ring. His glory days were long gone, but with sheer resilience and his signature submission move, he often turned the tide of matches in his favor. He even managed to defeat Frank's prized student during a training session using his counterattack technique. But no one believed Brendan had won by skill, because the guy he beat was ranked in the world's top 10. He was one of the strongest contenders for the upcoming Sparta tournament title, far beyond Brendan's level. Yet the very next day during a routine training, the fighter suffered a serious thigh injury. When they left the hospital, Frank was devastated. Now, with only 2 days left until the Sparta tournament and the fighter needing at least a week to recover, his 4 years of preparation had all gone to waste. At that moment, Brendan bravely volunteered to take his place. Frank didn't look down on Brendan, but the Sparta tournament was no joke. It was the Super Bowl of MMA. The prize money alone was $5 million. Every participant was a world-class champion, Olympic wrestlers, undefeated MMA legends. Even at his peak, Brendan would have struggled, and now his aging body stood even less chance. But Brendan had no way out. His collapsing family was depending on this prize money to survive the present and future. Moved by Brendan's desperate resolve and refusal to quit, Frank agreed to talk with the organizers. Since his original fighter had dropped out due to injury, Frank managed to get Brendan registered as a substitute without much resistance. But when Tess found out, she was furious. Brendan had promised to only fight in amateur matches, and now he had secretly signed up for a professional tournament of the highest level. Tess, already burdened by their daughter's medical bills and looming foreclosure, still said she'd rather lose everything and live on the streets than watch her husband risk his life in the ring. Faced with Brendan's unwavering determination, she stormed out after saying just one thing: she would never come to watch him fight. 2 days later, the Sparta tournament kicked off as planned. Every fighter was surrounded by reporters, except Brendan, the nobody. But as he enters the arena, he spots another ignored figure, his long-lost younger brother, Tommy. And with that, a buried memory resurfaced. As kids, Brendan and Tommy both trained under their father, Paddy, who was also a fight coach. But Tommy's natural talent quickly left Brendan in the dust. Since his debut, Tommy had never lost a fight. He won youth Olympic titles and college championships. No one in the country could match him. But just as he was about to break a legendary winning streak from Greek mythology, he suddenly disappeared with their mother. They simply couldn't take it anymore, living under the same roof as a father whose PTSD and drinking turned into violent rage. Back then, Brendan didn't run away with them, because he couldn't bring himself to abandon his girlfriend. So he stayed behind, alone, to endure the wrath of their violent father. As the family shattered, his spirit was left torn and scarred by years of abuse. That painful past made him cherish stability more than anything. The smiles of his wife and daughter became the only remedy that could heal his broken heart. That's why, in the end, he gave up the glory of the ring, choosing to retire at the peak of his career for the sake of that happiness. Later that night, the two brothers met again by the beach. There was no joy in their reunion, only years of resentment. Tommy resented his brother for not following the plan and escaping with them, leaving him helpless when their mother fell gravely ill. Brendan, in turn, blames Tommy for vanishing without a word for years, not even contacting him when their mother passed away.
You had no right to keep that from me. That was not your decision to make.
No way. You walk around with your pictures in your wallet, and you're all, I forgive you. I forgive Pop.
And just like that, their first meeting in 24 years ended in mutual blame and buried resentment. Steel petals fell, and the stars lit the sky. As the grand opening ceremony began, every fighter's profile was revealed to the public. Among them, the most mysterious was Tommy. There was no data on him, no records online, no background info, just 2 viral clips. One clip showed him knocking out the nation's top fighter, Grimes, right on the spot, and that was the main reason he qualified for the Sparta tournament. The other clip showed him prying open a tank door with his bare hands to save 2 trapped soldiers in the Persian Gulf. It turned out, after their mother's death, he had changed his name and joined the Marines, explaining why so little was known about him. After leaving the service, he returned to the childhood gym and happened to beat down Grimes, the nation's #1 fighter. That victory caught the eye of a manager, who landed him a spot in Sparta. But to regain his peak condition, Tommy had no choice but to turn to the one man he once swore off, his father, for training. That doesn't mean he's forgiven him, though. Their arrangement is purely transactional. When the tournament officially began, Tommy entered the ring to cheers from the crowd. Commentators weren't impressed. He had no formal fight record, and his opponent was none other than Barbosa, the infamous Captain Death. But as soon as the first round started, Tommy casually walked out of the octagon with full confidence. Unaware of what happened, the audience thought he was forfeiting the match. Meanwhile, Barbosa lay unconscious in the cage, the victory already his. Compared to his brother Tommy's calm and confident exit, Brendan, about to step into the ring, looked visibly anxious. Behind him was a family he needed to protect. In front of him stood Midnight, a ruthless fighter known as the Killer. He couldn't afford to lose, but winning wouldn't be easy. And sure enough, as soon as the fight began, Midnight unleashed a savage assault. He slammed Brendan to the ground and locked him into a brutal leg choke with no escape. Commentators declared Brendan finished. His face had turned purple. Frank screamed from the sidelines, telling him not to give up. This was their pact. Paddy prayed in front of his TV. Even Zito silently hoped he'd pull through. And Brendan didn't disappoint. Despite nearly blacking out, he held on for 20 seconds, long enough for the bell to ring and keep his hope alive. But his helpless defense became the butt of jokes. The announcer mocked him, saying Brendan was like a goldfish tossed into a tank of sharks. During the break, Frank laid out the next strategy: target Midnight's weak points. Then, go in for a takedown, and finish him with Brendan's signature lock. And as round 2 began, Brendan kept Frank's words firmly in mind. He focused his attacks on Midnight's lower body, and the moment Midnight threw a punch, Brendan seized his leg and slammed him hard to the mat. When Midnight tried to rise and strike back, Brendan swept him to the ground with a swift kick, then locked him down with Brazilian jiu-jitsu, firmly restraining every point of leverage. Under the stunned gaze of the audience, guided by Frank's instructions and with commentators now changing their tone, Midnight finally tapped out in defeat.
Can't happen. It just did, bro. He taps. Brendan down the taps. Midnight. I can't believe that.
Brendan had done it. With sharp tactics and years of hard-earned skill, he beat Midnight and advanced to the next round. Zito jumped in joy in front of the TV. Even Tess, who swore she wouldn't watch, gets the news of his win. In the rounds that followed, Brendan stuck to his defensive strategy. He absorbed blow after blow, battered and bruised, yet unshaken in his will. When his opponents left themselves open, Brendan struck, locking them in tight until they had no choice but to submit. This overlooked physics teacher had pulled off yet another impossible comeback, earning thunderous cheers from the crowd. Meanwhile, Tommy's matches were far less dramatic. When the bell rang, it was as if his opponents were already sentenced. In less than 15 seconds, another opponent lay unconscious. Tommy once again walked away calm, barely breaking a sweat. The two brothers advanced to the semifinals in completely different ways. The night along the Atlantic City shoreline was especially quiet. Tommy sat alone in an arcade, waiting for the next day. Then, Patty approached quietly and said, "I'm proud of you for what you did today." But Tommy saw it as hollow praise. Even though he had accepted his father as a trainer, he had never truly forgiven him for the past. It was as if an earthquake shook through Patty's eyes, followed by a deep, overwhelming sadness. Just a few days earlier, his eldest son Brendan had also shut him out. Same impatience, same harsh dismissal. Get lost. Even though this father claimed he had sobered up, repented, and promised never to pose a threat to his family again, he was still denied the chance to meet his granddaughter. Rejected by his eldest son, and now driven away like a beggar by his youngest, this old man was finally tasting the bitter fruit of the violence he planted 30 years ago. The next day, Tommy returned to the hotel, only to find his father, sober for over 3 years, drowning his pain in liquor, cursing the commander who let him down. It turned out he too carried a painful memory. He had once watched helplessly as his comrades struggled in the water, powerless to stop the commander's order to retreat. In war, it's always kill or be killed, victory or defeat. It leaves scars that weigh heavy on the soul. Sometimes, only burning alcohol can numb the pain of memory. Tommy understood that kind of pain all too well. He gently carried his father to bed and comforted him, saying, "It's all over now." Although he couldn't forgive everything his father had done in the past, at least for that moment, Tommy didn't push the drunken old man away. As night fell, the Spartan semifinals began as scheduled. Tommy didn't wake his sleeping father. Instead, he entered the arena alone. Thanks to his incredible performances and heroic act of saving tank crew members on the battlefield, Tommy had already won over a massive following. A group of local Marines even showed up at the arena, forming a chorus to sing him a soldier's victory song. And this time, his opponent was Grimes, the very fighter he had already defeated once before. Grimes, now the country's #1 ranked fighter, had sworn revenge countless times on social media. Even before the referee finished explaining the rules, Grimes was already seething with rage. But his bravado quickly turned into humiliation. Tommy struck first. A single punch dropped Grimes instantly, followed by a relentless storm of blows like a thunderstorm pounding down.
That dog's in trouble! He stopped this! Stop it! Stop the fight!
If the referee hadn't pulled Tommy away, Grimes might have already been knocking on heaven's door. Once again, Tommy left the ring with the same quiet confidence as the crowd's cheers echoed behind him. Next up was Brendan, and his opponent was none other than Koba, the top-ranked fighter in the world. Before the match, commentators didn't hold much hope for Brendan. Koba had a flawless 67-fight winning streak, but outside the arena, in an open-air viewing area, Brendan's students gathered in support, holding up posters cheering him on. And the person who organized this support rally was none other than Principal Zito, who had been quietly watching over him all along. Even his wife, who once said she would never watch him fight, came to the arena to cheer him on. As the first round began, Koba immediately showcased his dominant fighting style. Brendan tried to fight back, but none of his punches had any effect. Koba seized the moment and knocked him to the ground with a devastating strike. Brendan withstood blow after blow from Koba. When he tried to get up and strike back, Koba lifted him and slammed him into the mat.
No, get up! The air! No! He just flew against the fence like a ragdoll! No wonder how Colin can take this kind of beat.
Luckily, the round-ending bell came just in time to give Brendan a brief reprieve. During the break, Frank walked up and reminded him why he was here.
You don't knock him out. You don't have a home.
Never underestimate a man's determination to protect his family, and never take the potential of a retired fighter lightly. In round 2, Brendan weathered Koba's storm, then summoned his strength to push Koba to the edge of the ring, only to be caught in a tight front choke. But this time, Brendan didn't just hang on and wait for the round to end. He fought back.
For a win!
After taking Koba to the ground, Brendan attempted to lock in an armbar. But a world champion doesn't earn that title for nothing. Koba quickly broke free with sheer force. As the fight dragged on, Brendan abandoned defense entirely and launched a ferocious counterattack against an increasingly fatigued Koba. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a man on the brink, driven into a corner by life. In his world, defeat wasn't an option. On this battlefield, there was no way out but forward. As both men hit the mat, Brendan locked Koba's leg in a nearly self-sacrificing submission hold. At the same time, Koba rained down furious blows on Brendan's waist in desperation. No one could believe it. The world champion had actually been forced to tap out by a physics teacher. But everyone also believed it, because limitless potential can create miracles again and again. After the match, Brendan returned to the locker room to ice his swollen injuries. In 2 hours, he'll face Tommy in the finals. With the final drawing unprecedented attention, Tommy's background was finally exposed by major media outlets. The hero who once rescued trapped tank crew members was actually a deserter. After joining the Marine Corps, Tommy had met a comrade who became like family to him. But during one mission, his entire unit was mistaken for enemies and bombarded by friendly fire from Allied jets. Only Tommy survived. Devastated and disillusioned, he dropped everything and disappeared. As for the tank rescue, that was merely a spontaneous act during his escape. And the reason he entered the tournament to fight for the $5 million prize was to help his fallen comrade's widow live a better life. Now, military police had arrived at the arena. Once Tommy finished the final match, he would be taken into custody for court-martial. But to the live audience, the most explosive revelation was that the two fighters competing for tonight's world heavyweight title were actually brothers. Before the match, Tommy once again didn't wake his drunken father. He walked into the arena alone, brave and silent. Nearly every seat in the stadium was filled with fans he had earned through strength alone. The Marines, moved by his rescue story, cheered in unison for him. In contrast, Brendan had only one person behind him, his quietly watching wife. As both fighters took their positions, the most anticipated match of the night was about to begin. Tommy wasted no time unleashing a brutal assault. His fists showed no mercy, even though his opponent was his own brother. Every strike landed heavy. Every movement was aimed at bringing Brendan down. Because Tommy's heart still burned with resentment. He hated the violence their father inflicted on them as children. He hated that Brendan didn't choose to leave with him and their mother. He hated the friendly fire that took the life of his only true friend. What he hated even more was the helplessness he felt when faced with the deaths of his mother and his comrade. Tommy's performance in the final was more ferocious than any match before. His unrelenting fury revealed a flaw, and Frank saw it. He shouted to Brendan to stay defensive, keep adjusting, and wait for the right moment to strike with his best submission hold. In round 2, Tommy continued his rampage, pouring out every ounce of pain through his fists. He hit Brendan so hard he nearly blacked out. But Brendan held on until the round ended. What kept Brendan going wasn't hate like Tommy's, but love. He loved his wife and daughter. They were the ones who healed his broken soul. And he loved his brother, even though Tommy was pummeling him. Because Brendan knew this was the person he owed the most. But this match held something he could not afford to lose. Finally, through careful defense, Brendan spotted an opening. He seized it, locking Tommy's left arm in a crushing submission. Brendan immediately sensed that his brother's arm was broken. He looked to the referee, hoping they would stop the match, but Frank shouted at him to keep going. Meanwhile, Tommy endured the pain alone. His eyes darted around searching for help. He once told Brendan, "You're not my brother. My brothers are in the Corps." Now, hearing the cheers of those very brothers, Tommy clenched his jaw and stood again. Tommy had only one hand left to throw punches. He had already lost the ability to stand against Brendan. The outcome was no longer in doubt. Brendan dodged and defended, begging Tommy to give up. But Tommy answered only with his stubborn right hand. Seeing no other option, Brendan shifted to all-out offense, determined to end the match quickly and end their shared pain. Their father, who arrived late, finally entered the arena, only to witness a scene that pierced his heart. Brendan had locked Tommy into a rear naked choke, but his lips kept repeating the same words. "I'm sorry."
Yeah, Tommy. It's okay.
Today,
It's okay.
smile.
I love you.
In the end, it was Brendan's words, "I love you," that finally made Tommy extend his right hand in surrender. After the match, Brendan refused to let anyone near. He stayed by Tommy's side, protective, silent, and full of love. Maybe what Tommy needed all along wasn't an apology, but a simple, "I love you." If it weren't for those words, he might have chosen suffocation over surrender. But Brendan's love broke through Tommy's rage. It healed a heart torn apart by war, by loss, and by years of silence. It gave him a new reason to hope for life beyond the ring. As the brothers leaned on each other, their father smiled through tears. He may not have earned his son's forgiveness, but at least he witnessed their reconciliation. From this moment on, Tommy would no longer be alone. He had regained the brother he loved, Brendan. Perhaps true courage has never been about appearing brave, but about who you are willing to stand up for. Both brothers had reasons they couldn't back down, but Brendan carried with him a deeper strength that came from letting go of the past and choosing to move forward with hope. When they first reunited on the beach, Tommy was still holding on to old wounds while Brendan spoke of the life he had built. Like his brother, he had not forgiven their father's violence, but he chose to let go of the sorrow, to unlock his heart, and allow love and laughter to become the warm light that brightened the darkest corners of his past. With just a simple, "I love you," he helped his brother finally release the weight he had carried for so long. He brought hope and redemption into Tommy's dark world, allowing his bruised body and wounded soul to grow new tenderness and strength. No one can pass through the storm without leaving a trace, and past hatred cannot simply be ignored, but it can be dissolved through love. What's past doesn't need regret, and the future is full of promise. So let us dry the tears that have lingered in pain with Tommy, and let the clouds of yesterday quietly drift away, painting the sky of our hearts with a gentle blue. After all, the stories of the past don't need to be rewound, but the future is waiting for us to love.